Hi, I'm Droolbatz. It's so nice to see you. Today I'm going to be reviewing the 2018 horror movie Await Further Instructions. I'm going to be discussing it based on its premise, its production value and artistic choices, and finally, how it compares or contrasts to other films of the genre. I hope you enjoy. Man who hasn't gone home for the holidays in quite a few years because he doesn't really like his family's tense and weird dynamic is finally going home for the holidays because he has a girlfriend and she wants to meet his family. Unfortunately, however, his family has not changed much, and once they get home, the family is very tense and irritating. This family is white and his girlfriend is of Middle Eastern descent, so there's a little bit of racist subtleties going on there, and it's just making it really unpleasant. So finally he gets really frustrated and is like, you know what, babe, let's just go, let's just leave. However, when they try to leave subtly in the middle of the night so that they don't make too many people mad, they can't get out the front door. They can't get out the windows. Something is blocking the doors and windows. The rest of the family wakes up and tries to figure out what's going on, and they realize their house has been like quarantined or something, but they're not sure why. On their family TV set, like the TV turns on and some words appear that say, "Don't eat the food has been contaminated, await further instructions." Instructions start popping up on this TV screen and tensions start rising, and the family has to figure out what the heck is going on and if it's possible for them to escape, and basically what'll happen when the time runs out and when they run out of food and water and all of that. At exactly 90 minutes, Await Further Instructions is, I would argue, the perfect length. There's really no dead space in this movie. It clips right along. I'd say that the beginning is probably its weakest point. It's just a little bit slow there, and it's a little bit kind of stereotypical, but the movie kind of sets itself apart. Mysterious, scary elements start happening pretty immediately and stay for the rest of the movie. So the pacing's really excellent, and in that front, the writing was really good. The way that this movie kind of brought in like the subtle racist things, that wasn't the focal point of the movie at all, but it added to the weird family tensions, and it was very timely. I think just some of the comments were like, oh no, like, we're not racist, we just, like, we hate terrorists, so, things like that. They kind of made it very reflective of like a lot of conversations that I see people have in real life. So I thought that in that way it was like subtle, very timely, and very well done. The lighting changed noticeably as the movie went on and on. It's very common for a lot of digitally shot movies nowadays to kind of skew towards the cool colors, like having a lot of like muted blues and such. And this movie started to go that direction, and at first I was like, ugh, okay, whatever, I won't fault them. But actually, the colors got more and more intensely monochromatic as it went on. While it actually seemed like at first perhaps it could have gone like the stereotypical like muted blues, it actually was a very solid artistic choice that really was there to convey the mood rather than just out of laziness or just choosing a common camera filter. As far as the visuals, the special effects in this movie, they were simple, but very appropriate to the story that was being told. Honestly, with movies that sometimes don't have a high budget, less can be more. And in this case, this was a TV movie, so I'm not sure what their budget actually was. Basically, the special effects didn't look cheesy. They looked very convincing, and there weren't too many of them, so it wasn't like, the film was trying to top itself each time they brought a new one onto the screen. I was very, very impressed with how they worked those out. They stood out visually to me too, compared to a lot of special effects that I've seen lately, because while some of them I think were digital, there were also some what looked to me like stop motion kind of stuff going on. It made for a really interesting visual, and it really stood out in a good way to me. Although it's set during the holidays, Await Further Instructions is not inherently a holiday movie. I thought it was really clever how they set it during the holidays though, so that they could kind of draw on a lot of different elements to add to the mystery of this movie. For example, my instinct was immediately like, aliens are here, there's aliens happening. The family thinks at first that it's like some kind of global act of terrorism, and that their government is saying like, oh, there's diseases in the air, bioterrorism, so just stay in your homes. They think that at first, you know, which is a different level of scary. And then later on in the movie, some of them think it might be actually like God testing them because they're like good Christians or whatever. So it was really clever how they did that. The movie kind of walked the line of like, oh, is this like a ghostly thing? Is this a sci-fi thing? Like what kind of thing is this monster or organization or whatever that they're dealing with? And because they were able to kind of like bring in, you know, like religion or like paranoia about the government at different points, they were able to create moments of very high visual tension. For example, there's a scene where the father is saying the Apostles' Creed prayer, and as he's going on, the visuals in this scene start to get more bold and intense. The lighting starts to change really dramatically. Just a lot of like subtle things like that were very interesting visually, and I thought they really added to the weird, tense, mysterious, alarming feel of this movie. Await Further Instructions is a TV movie, but it's one of the most high-end TV movies I have seen in recent memory. Now I'm going to be discussing how this movie stands apart from or blends into other films of the genre. I may be spoiling this movie a tiny little bit, so I'm gonna try not to, but if you don't like spoilers, it's been lovely having you, but take this as your cue to leave. Thank you to those who are sticking around. This movie drew on a lot of successful and familiar elements from a lot of other movies, many of which I think are fairly famous, so you may have seen them. And they kind of managed to combine them into its own fairly unique little movie. Some of the elements that I think are very familiar are, of course, the whole, the nervous, almost neurotic kind of housewife character. In this case, it was his mom. She had a lot of similarities to the wife in The Shining by Stanley Kubrick, which is, I mean, a lot of movies have that. Unfortunately, that's often a sign of someone who's being abused either emotionally or whatever. So that's unfortunate, but her similarities to the wife in The Shining were quite noticeable to me. The whole, is this even happening or is somebody taking advantage of us kind of a thing, the whole debate of like what's going on and is it even real was very reminiscent of Cloverfield Lane, in my opinion. Of course, in that one, a girl wakes up in a bunker somewhere with people she doesn't know, and they say that they've rescued her and they can survive. In this one, it's more like they're trapped in their own house with people they do know, but it's still like, you know, how do you know someone's not just punking you, that kind of a thing. And of course, the whole like a mysterious party that you don't know if it's a human or an alien or a demon or what, giving you instructions. That's a common trope as well. The movie that comes to mind for me was Truth or Dare, which I actually did a review on, and in that one it was like a demon who like challenges you through leaving you dares, but in that movie it does it with like a different contact method each time. Like at one point it pops up on a computer screen, another time it calls on the phone, another time like a hand writes it on like dust in the house or something. In this case, it was all contact through the TV, and they weren't able to determine like who was sending it or whatever, but it was still very mysterious, and that was kind of part of the tension, like who is sending us these points of contact. All of these are kind of familiar elements that they appear in numerous stories everywhere, but when you combine them together, it made for a very intense movie, especially with the way this was edited. The soundlessness of the communications in this case, I think made it stand apart from other movies I've seen where like they get maybe a ransom note and they, read it out loud. In this case, await further instructions would pop up on the screen and on like the TV screen, and there wouldn't be like any kind of, notification noise that they got this message, and they just have to walk by and see it. And sometimes they would read it out loud and sometimes they really wouldn't. They just react to seeing it, and the audience member had to read it, which I thought was an interesting choice. It made me feel like as an audience member, they didn't need to read it to me because, I'm not stupid. But at the same time, if you're a person who likes to do other things while you watch movies, you very much had to be paying attention to this movie, like with your eyes, because otherwise you'd miss what the heck they were talking about. Some movies are made to just kind of have on in the background. This one, you had to be paying attention. This is just my opinion, but for me, sometimes that can be a cheap gimmick. Like if you're looking at a movie screen the entire time because you're just, you know, enraptured with it, like that's a sign of a good movie. But if you're watching the movie because you have to, because like you're relying on subtitles or something, that doesn't inherently mean it's a good movie just because you're staring at the screen the whole entire time, if that makes sense. So in this movie, I think they just assumed you were going to be watching the whole time, and as it went on, it got very good. But in the beginning, it was a little bit of a slow start, so I did think it was kind of cheap at that point. But by the end, I was very invested. Like I said, this movie started a little bit slow and it got like insanely good by the end, and I was super into it by the end. Basically, I just liked it more and more as it went on. The movie had some really, really cool visuals. Like I said, the special effects were very appropriate to the story they were telling. They weren't super in your face. There's a scene where there's like these like broken glass of like a TV screen or something, and they look like jagged broken teeth, and I don't know, it was just very cool. A lot of the visual elements. I'm not gonna like spoil the ending for you, but there's a scene at the end where they've got some special effects going on, and I was astounded. I could not figure out how they did that. Like it almost looked like really high-end stop motion or something instead of CGI. I was just floored. It was really cool. So visually, the movie was really cool. There's been a trend lately of a lot of different movies having like a mysterious person or entity or something kind of coming into people's lives and wreaking havoc and kind of changing the world or their existence or whatever. And there not really being an explanation for how it got there, and really not an explanation of what it is, what it wants, why it's there. Sometimes those can be successful, sometimes not. I think in this case, the movie, without over-explaining anything, it managed to kind of explain like 1 or 2 points of interest, even though they kept it mysterious. So I think it was more successful than movies like Bird Box, where that happened. Not to shade Bird Box, but you know. So in that way, I would argue that it kind of jumped on that trend. But like I said, it managed to make the movie its own story. While it did borrow elements from other movies and things, it did manage to like make it its own story. So I don't inherently hold that against it or anything like that. If I had to rate this movie, I would give it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I really liked it. At the beginning, it seemed a little bit like it was going to be a generic movie, but as it went on, it got really exciting. The problem is most of the characters weren't that likable. I'd argue that the boyfriend and girlfriend were very likable, but for the most part, his family's horrible, which is like why he stayed away. So I mean, it made it hard to root for them and like honestly, you know, hard to care about them. But the story was really interesting. The phenomenon was really interesting. The visuals got really cool, and the tension just rose and rose and rose until by the end I was so into it. So even though it had a little bit of a slow start and some of the characters weren't that interesting or likable, it was a really good movie overall, and just a really satisfying horror movie. I definitely would recommend it, but I'd love to hear what you have to say. Did you like this movie? If you have not seen this movie, do you plan to see this movie? I don't know, whatever. Let me know if you have any thoughts. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you liked this review and that it was helpful to you. Please like this video if you liked it, and consider subscribing if you'd like to see more. I review horror movies on this channel. Anyway, thank you so much for stopping by. Have a great day. Bye.